We have Karina Rosario, the Clinical Site Manager, ActivMed Practices and Research, and Ashley Kennedy, our Clinical Operations Manager. We want to start with Terry Stubbs, our CEO and founder of ActivMed Practices and Research. Her company has been in business since 1994. She has 32 years of healthcare management experience and has been working in the field of clinical research for 30 years. She is a certified clinical research coordinator as well as certified clinical research quality manager. She's a speaker for national clinical research education conferences and has donated her time for over 10 years to help educate the research community. We want to welcome Terry today.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is an important topic. There's been so much going on in the world. I'm glad that you could be here with us. What we actually do here is we study tomorrow's possible treatments today. Medications and devices for treatments of diseases and their symptoms make the world we live in much less painful than it has been for our forefathers. Our quality of life has improved as humans to the generation that have come before us. If you compare what happened to them to what happens to us now, it's a lot different. And a really good example of that is childbirth. 1 of every 7 women in past history died during childbirth. And through the new changes and treatments, we now have a much safer time as women giving birth. We live longer as a result of the discovery of all the new treatments that help mankind. When you go into the pharmacy and you grab a bottle of aspirin, a bottle of Tylenol, any kind of medication in there that's over the counter, most of that has actually gone through clinical research trials to be approved. Now the world is focusing on developing vaccines and cures to help alleviate the current COVID-19, and we are part of that also. Medical research is extremely important for every disease, and it is how we find cures. What I'd like to do now is introduce Dr. Michael McCartney. We've worked together for 30 years? Oh my God, 30 years. He's the director. He's also board certified in internal medicine, and he's been working with us for a long time. Completed his residency at Roger Williams General Hospital and Medical Center in Providence, Rhode Island in 1991. He was awarded membership to the Tri Beta National Science Honor Society and received the Bosch and Lomb Science Award during his studies. He is board certified internal medicine in the states of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and he is a member of the Massachusetts Medical Society, American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. Dr. McCartney has been conducting clinical trials with us since 1994. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for spending some time on this beautiful day to hopefully catch up with a little history on Alzheimer's disease, which I think is appropriate given that this disorder has been going on for over 100 years. And was first discovered by a German neurologist actually back in 1906, and did not actually get the name Alzheimer's disease until 1910. It took, however, unfortunately, decades of scientific improvement before we could actually get to the basis of this disorder from more than just a clinical standpoint, certainly with the onset of the electron microscope back in the 30s, and now the identification of some of the more pertinent factors like the beta amyloid, which was identified in 1984, and the tau protein, which came 2 years later in 1986. And following that, it was then gave us in the research community the ability to develop the first Alzheimer's drug trial in 1987. Following this, there was also the identification of the gene, which was associated with as an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And the first drug, unfortunately, it was not even approved by the FDA until 1993. So, as you can see, almost 6 years of clinical research to develop the first agent in the treatment of this serious disorder. As it is known, it's the most common form of dementia and probably the sixth leading cause of death in this country. Basically, with the onset of neuroimaging, MRIs, PET scans, we've certainly been able to start to improve and escalate our abilities to delve deeper into both the pathology and changes that this disease causes within the brain, as well as being able to look from a scientific standpoint at various therapies going into the future. Since this time, there has also been a collaboration, and an Alzheimer's trial database was established in 2010. Unfortunately, to this date, we are still way behind in our abilities to treat this disease. We currently only have 5 drugs that are available, and most of these are to just temporarily help memory and slow down the progression of the disease. Unfortunately, there's been nothing new on the forefront for almost a decade, and although there are many trials now currently in process, both from the standpoint of targeting new drugs, but also looking into both other treatments as well. Certainly, it appears there's almost 600 clinical trials at last count, and these studies now are delving into other areas other than just drug treatment and prevention. There are also now known dietary supplements, metabolic issues within the brain that are being addressed in the Alzheimer's patients. There certainly are people working in the areas of nutrition, and specifically there's been a diet developed by what's referred to as the MIND diet for both the Mediterranean and DASH with the neurologic improvement kind of approach. Other physical treatments, including acupuncture, the electromagnetic devices looking at targeting different ways to initiate the brain and its synapses, and various light therapies are also being looked into as to their ability to help in the area of brain function and improving symptoms, with ultimately the hope being at some point devising a way to actually prevent and or intervene early enough to stop the process of this disease. Over the last 12 years here at ActivMed, we've actually conducted 18 clinical trials. They've included some of these areas that I previously mentioned, with device studies, interacting with other mobile devices to impact cognitive function, other light therapies, and with the inclusion of sound, to looking at brain function, and then certainly our most common approach is still looking at new drug therapies, trying to address the pathology that's been identified with the amyloid plaques and the tau proteins. So it's an exciting time in the area of clinical research in the disorder. I finally have tools and are trying to work at developing eventually a approach to prevention of this very devastating disorder, both to the patient as well as families. Obviously, we are always in need of subjects to try to help with these clinical trials, and look forward to the future.
So the studies that we have, Dr. McCartney, are they for severe Alzheimer's patients, or are they more for early onset or mild to moderate?
Well, I think at this point, we're trying to look at that population, which falls into a kind of cognitive impaired to mild onset, in part because once patients become severe, the damage has been done, and it's harder to show the ability to improve or stop that process.
Well, thank you for your time and your information. I'm sure we find it exciting. I'd like to introduce to you now our next speaker, which is Jennifer Trotter. She is the Senior Management of Recruitment and Program Services at the Global Alzheimer's Platform Foundation. Jennifer is a Senior Manager of Recruitment and Program Services for Alzheimer's Platform Foundation, Global Alzheimer's, and is based in Dallas, Texas. She's joined the organization in 2018, and she serves as a GAP Participant Services liaison for several regions of the U.S., and we're lucky enough that she's our liaison, including the greater Boston area. Jennifer has over 15 years of experience working with families who are dealing with Alzheimer's disease, and brings her wealth of knowledge to her work with the GAP-NET research sites. Jennifer, it's in your hands.
All right, thank you, Terry. And good morning, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be part of this webinar this morning, and I applaud all of you who have joined. I think you're going to get some really great information, and just appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. So Global Alzheimer's Platform Foundation is an organization in the US and Canada. We're a not-for-profit organization with a goal of speeding up drug development for Alzheimer's research. We have a network of sites, over 80 sites currently, and we're lucky enough to have ActivMed Practices and Research as one of our member sites. So you might ask, how do we actually speed up the development of drugs and treatments for Alzheimer's disease? As Dr. McCartney alluded to, there have not been very many drugs approved over the last several years. We really don't have any cures for Alzheimer's disease, and it's quite a complex problem. So the way the Global Alzheimer's Platform Foundation works is we partner with our member sites, which, as I mentioned, ActivMed is one of them, and we try to work closely with their study team to support them in their efforts for Alzheimer's research. So any barriers that they encounter, we try to find solutions to, and we just support them in any way that we can with marketing and information, getting the word out about research, and other barriers like transportation to the sites. We have a program for that. We also encourage our sites to network with each other and share best practices. So these are just all ways that we try to help speed things along with Alzheimer's research. As you can see on the slide, our GAP leadership, we're small but mighty. We have over 50 years experience combined with our team, and we cover sites in the whole United States, as you can see from the map. So I love my work with GAP. I love working with ActivMed, and I'm, again, really happy to be part of this webinar this morning. So next slide, please. So currently we are working on a project together. It's called the Clarity AD study. And the goal of this study is to evaluate an investigational drug for adults who suffer from memory loss. It's actually looking for, as Dr. McCartney mentioned, a drug that will work on the amyloid plaque that forms in the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease. Anyone who might qualify or participate in this study will receive a biweekly infusion of the study drug or a placebo, and the study lasts about 24 months. So there's an 18-month treatment window, and then there's a couple of months on the front end with the screening process, and then there's a 3-month follow-up after the treatment portion of the study. As we've mentioned, finding volunteers for our studies is one of the biggest barriers. So these Alzheimer's studies are very long. It takes a long time to find enough people to participate. So really recruiting volunteers is one of our biggest barriers. This particular study is looking for volunteers who are noticing changes in their memory. So for example, if you or a loved one are having or feeling more forgetful lately, you could potentially be a candidate for this study. So some examples of things that might be red flags: forgetting what day it is, getting lost going to a familiar place, for example, driving to the grocery store or church, places you've been to often and you suddenly can't remember how to get there. Frequently forgetting words or names when you're having conversations. Frequently losing or misplacing items could be a warning sign. Trouble managing your bills or finances, especially if that's something that you were always really good with and suddenly you're finding that you're forgetting to pay or not able to balance your checkbook. Another red flag would be trouble with familiar hobbies or tasks. So for example, you have a recipe that you've made for years and you suddenly can't remember how to do it or what the ingredients are. So those would be all things that would be important to get checked out. If you notice that in yourself or in a loved one, I would encourage you to get that checked. Because they could be symptoms of a more serious memory problem. And it might make you eligible to participate in this particular study, the Clarity AD study. I'd like to talk for a minute too why research could be a good option. As you know, Alzheimer's disease does not have a cure. The treatments that we have developed really don't do a whole lot. They treat some of the symptoms, but they are not found to be particularly effective. Being in research actually makes you part of the solution. As I've mentioned several times, one of our biggest obstacles is finding volunteers. So by volunteering in a study, you'd be becoming part of the solution. You'd also get to work with a professional team like this team at ActivMed, and I can assure you, you're going to get such oversight on your health and great information about your brain health and your overall health. You'll also be getting access to potential new treatments. And you're also going to be helping to progress medical research, which is very important. If you qualify for this study or one of the other studies that ActivMed is involved with, you're going to get all of your related testing and medical care free of charge. And you'll also potentially get reimbursement for your travel. As our GAP president frequently reminds us, the first person cured of Alzheimer's disease is going to be in an Alzheimer's clinical trial. So maybe it could be you. Now I'd like to turn it over to the ActivMed study team, who's going to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to be in a clinical trial. Thank you so much.
I'd actually have the honor to introduce Karina Rosario. She is a physician from the Dominican Republic who has been working with us for 8 years in clinical research. She's the clinical site manager for ActivMed in the area of neurology, working with indications such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other CNS conditions. She is a certified dementia rater in Alzheimer's and has recently been certified as a certified dementia practitioner. She is also a certified clinical research coordinator through the Association of Clinical Research Professionals. So Karina, it's now in your hands.
Thank you, Terry. So I'm going to be speaking about memory screens. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So why do we do memory screens? So it's something that our company does in our site for the community. These screens are free of charge, and we generally do not bill your insurance. A reason why we do memory screens is because a lot of the primary care offices do not offer this service as kind of part of your preventive care. And then also a lot of people out there are experiencing memory issues. They're forgetting things and having memory loss and are stressed and worried about it, but are afraid to seek any help. So going for a memory screen is something that might be a good thing to look after. Memory screens also kind of provide a baseline for your memory to see where you're at. And these are done at our offices, could be done in office or via telehealth with a staff member who has experience doing clinical memory screens. These screens take about 15 to 20 minutes, where we'll just ask a few questions regarding your cognitive domains. And this is all HIPAA compliant, so your privacy and health information is protected under HIPAA guidelines. We'll only share this information with your primary care physician if you request us to do that. Next slide, please. So how do we sign up for a memory screen? You could call our ActivMed offices, which are located in Methuen, Portsmouth, or Lawrence, and speak to one of our staff members to schedule this appointment. Like I said, this test takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And depending on how you score on the test, we could offer you different options. Also provide you a copy of your test so you could follow up with your physician. We could schedule a retest within 6 months to a year, depending on how you do on the memory screen. And we could give you information on our current studies in memory loss. And the coordinator may talk to you a little bit of what study might be a good fit for you. And always remember that our staff here is here to help. We work with multiple specialists in the area who have vast experience in memory loss and Alzheimer's, and are studying different treatments for this disease, which, as you all know, has taken a huge toll in our community and our health system. So next slide. So in this slide is just talking a little bit about where we're located and our phone number and how to reach us. So we have 3 locations where we're doing memory screens: the Methuen office, our Portsmouth office, and our Lawrence office. Like I said, this could be done via our office or telehealth, where we do it over the phone. And you could also go to our website, ActivMedResearch.com, to just get more information on our studies and memory screens. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Karina. It's very important that people realize, because in most times it's not included in your yearly physical, that you have a memory screening. You have a screening for everything else, diabetes, cholesterol, heart, all kinds of good things, but memory screening isn't usually included in that. So we do recommend that everybody over the age of 50 get a memory screening as a baseline, and then yearly get it checked. I'd like to now introduce Ashley Kennedy, who is our Clinical Operations Manager. She has really big shoes to fit. Ashley has been working with us for almost 4 years and currently works as our Clinical Operations Manager. She comes to ActivMed with experience working on long-term care units with Alzheimer's and dementia patients, as well as research and educational background in genetics and molecular biology. Ashley is both a certified clinical research coordinator and a certified dementia practitioner. She enjoys combining her love of patient care with her excitement of science and research. Ashley, I'll hand it to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. So today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about, if you were to participate in a research study with us for Alzheimer's, kind of what your experience would be like in our office, because a lot of people don't know a lot about what is involved in participating in a clinical trial. So when you arrive, it's not going to feel a lot different than if you arrived at your regular doctor's office or your primary care office. You'll come into our waiting room and you'll check in at the front desk. The first time you come to our site, we'll have you complete a medical questionnaire so that we have a good background as far as what medical conditions you have and what medications you're taking, so we can make good choices for you about which studies might be a good fit. Once the time for your appointment has arrived, a staff member will bring you back to our clinic and they will start your visit. At every research visit that you participate in, if you choose to partake in a clinical trial with us, we ask that you update the study team on any changes in your health and any different medications that you might be taking. And that's just so we can ensure that your safety is kept throughout the study, and if any of the medication changes you have might impact the way that the study drug works, that we know that and we can keep you as safe as possible. You'll also always have plenty of time to ask any questions you have about the study as a whole or the study treatment that you've been assigned. And you'll be able to discuss any concerns you have with the study team. If there's something that's worrying you, or if you're concerned you might be experiencing a side effect or anything like that. You'll always receive any instructions you need about your participation in the study, such as, how often to take your study drug, or if there are any other lifestyle modifications you might need to make as a result of your participation, things like that. And if the study team has any updates about the study, your participation in it, or the study drug that you are on, you would receive those updates as well. And then at some visits, you may also have some of the following procedures done as well too. So we often will check your vital signs, and that's just to make sure that there haven't been any changes. We'll also do EKGs at different time points throughout the study for cardiac safety, and run lab work or blood work to check on safety values there as well. At certain visits, you might have a physical exam and or a neurological exam with one of our providers. And at certain visits, you'll also do memory assessment, so we can kind of track and see if there have been any changes in your memory over the course of the study. You may also meet with one of our doctors or nurse practitioners, and you'll receive your study drug. And depending on the study you're in, that could be an oral study drug that you take home to take every day, or it might be given via an IV infusion or an injection. Now, COVID-19 has certainly had an impact on what our research looks like, but we're doing everything we can to keep our studies going and keep our staff and patients safe. So right now, patients, before they come into our office, receive a call usually the day before their visit. And during that call, we ask about how they're feeling, if you've had any symptoms of COVID-19, or if you've had contact with anyone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. We also ask about any recent travel you may have had to high-risk areas, and this is all to keep our patients and staff safe. When you arrive on site, we'll ask you again how you're feeling, as well as about COVID-19 exposure and recent travel to make sure nothing's changed since we spoke to you on the phone. And we'll check your temperature. We actually check the temperature of anyone who walks into our office, and that's to make sure that anyone who has a fever that might be concerning is sent home and able to reschedule their visit at a different time when they're feeling well. While you're in our office, we ask that all patients and their caregivers wear masks the entire time they're here. And we're really trying to run patients as soon as possible right now so that we don't have too many people waiting in the waiting room at any time. Our staff is also doing everything that we can to keep you safe. So our staff members are monitored daily for COVID-19 symptoms, and their temperatures are checked as soon as they arrive in the office. All our staff members and clinical members will be wearing a mask the entire time they're in clinic and the entire time your visit will be taking place. And they are not going to work if they are sick or may have been exposed to someone who has COVID-19. On top of this, our office is doing additional cleaning above and beyond what we normally do several times a day, especially high touch areas and high traffic areas, just to make sure everything is staying clean as possible. And all of our clinical staff members have received additional training on things such as hand hygiene, mask wearing, and infection control measures. They've all been trained on the additional cleaning protocols that have been put in place, and they are trained on monitoring themselves and others for COVID-19 symptoms.
Thank you, Ashley, that information. Now we're going to move into the area of questions. So I have a couple questions here that have come in, and this one is for Karina. It says, what type of cognitive testing will be done?
So we use 2 different tests.
We have a fire alarm going off. It seems to have stopped, so I guess we can continue. Sorry about that.
Okay. So to answer that question, we do different types of tests, but mainly what the testing is done is basically we're testing your memory, your orientation, and other functions which might be.
Sorry, I'm gonna.
Oh, we had the fire alarm again. Okay.
Today we're doing this.
I think they're doing something with the elevator, so it might be intermittently. We didn't know this. Anyway, let's go ahead and try again. Sorry.
Okay, let's try one more time. So, so basically, when you come in and get your memory test done, we're basically testing different cognitive domains. There's different tests out there. We used primarily 2 tests. And basically, we're testing your memory, orientation, how your judgment is, and other functions. Like this test is about 15 to 20 minutes, and it could be done over the phone also. So we are doing telehealth appointments as of now. You could call either our office or go through our website and do those.
So Karina, the next question is, do they have to commit to a clinical trial after having a memory screen?
No, you do not. You could just come in and do the memory screen. This is part of our community initiative. All studies are voluntary, so you do not have to commit to any clinical trial if you do not want to.
Okay. And can my doctor get a copy of my test, my memory screen?
Yes, we could provide you a copy of your memory test that you could follow up with your physician a little bit more on your memory loss.
So the next question we have is, how long is the clinical trial study? So I guess I would shoot that back to Jennifer.
Yes, I can address that. So the actual study, your participation, if you are a volunteer, would be about 24 months. You would be on treatment for 18 months, but there are a couple of months on the front end where we do some of our screening process. They would do some lab work, you do some memory testing, you would have some brain scans, and they would compile all of that information to make sure you're a good candidate for the study. Then the treatment period is 18 months. And as I mentioned, you'd come in every other week for an infusion. The drug is administered as an infusion. And then on the end, there's a 3-month period where you would have a couple of visits where they just follow up. So a 24-month commitment.
Okay, thank you. Dr. McCartney, this one's for you. I've noticed changes in my mom's memory, but she thinks she's fine and refuses to go to the doctor. How can I get her checked?
Well, that's one of the challenges that faces a lot of family members. I mean, it would hope to engage her primary care physician and get their assistance and help as well. Hopefully she's been seeing someone who she trusts and would be willing to do that with, and they would use some of the similar tools that we use here as far as memory testing, cognitive function evaluation, and looking for some of the treatable causes of these problems as well.
All right, thank you. There's one more here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who has more. And this question is again for you, Dr. McCartney. Are there things I can do or eat that will keep me from getting Alzheimer's disease?
As far as preventing the disease, I don't know I could go out on that limb, but certainly there are things you can do that will help maintain your brain health. You know, as I said earlier, there's something which is essentially a virtue of the Mediterranean diet called the MIND diet, which you can find online. Regular exercise is certainly also important. Maintaining brain health by virtue of reading and doing puzzles and keeping your mind active. All of these are just simple, basic things that you can start with.
Thank you. Laura, I'm going to change this over to you now because I think you have a bunch of questions coming in also.
Yes, I actually do. Thank you, Terry. One question for you that I think a lot of people question when it comes to studies is a loved one was a participant in a highly successful study a couple of years ago. The study's still ongoing and the results were never published. Who can I appeal to for information?
That's an interesting question. The best place to go for recent information that comes out in clinical trials is clinicaltrials.gov. But if the study is still ongoing, for instance, there may be a phase 2 and a phase 3 running at the same time. The phase 3 may take longer than the phase 2 to complete. They may not release the data until the phase 3 is completed, but the best place and source to go to for that information is clinicaltrials.gov.
Thank you so much. Ashley, this one is for you. Can volunteers be involved in more than one study simultaneously?
Question. So typically, no, especially if two studies both have a study drug, because we wouldn't be able to determine which of the drugs was impacting, any changes in someone's cognitive or mental health. And the drugs could also have some sort of interaction that we don't know about because they're both investigational. The only exception is occasionally there will be like an observational study where we're just trying to gather more data about Alzheimer's disease or dementia, but there's not an interventional drug. And so occasionally studies will allow for participants to participate in an observational study along with a study that has an investigational drug. But typically, no, it's one at a time.
Thank you. Jennifer, this one is for you. Are the GAP sites independent of major hospitals conducting research?
Great question. So out of our, I think right now we're at 82 sites. We do have some sites that are based in hospitals or in large academic institutions. And then we also have private sites. We have about half and half currently. And that's, we're open to any type of site, but we do try to keep that diverse mix because they function differently. A private site functions a little bit differently than a large institutional site. So we see the advantages to both.
And that the follow-up to that would be, are they doing the same study? So would a hospital be running the same study as an independent site, such as ActivMed Practices and Research?
They would, for certain, yes. For example, this Clarity ID study that I presented on, we have, so ActivMed is currently doing it, but we also have some large hospitals and institutions that are doing it. So it really, what it does, it makes it accessible to more people. Some people prefer to go to a smaller private site. They like the intimacy or almost kind of the boutique feel of that experience. Some people feel more comfortable going to a large hospital system for their research, but it's the exact same study. It's run the exact same way. So it's really just, again, participant preference and access to, what's closer to where you live too, which is going to make it easier for you to be compliant and participate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. McCartney, has research efforts been affected by the COVID-19?
Unfortunately, yes, both from the standpoint of, even though it's an essential part of, I think, health and clinical information, that we've had to reduce the number of patients based on the CDC guidelines and following through on patient safety. There have been trials which have been put on hold as a result of that, which will hopefully be resuming in the near future. But yes, unfortunately, it has slowed things down for the time being.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next one would be for Jennifer. Is GAP affiliated with the Alzheimer's Association?
So we are not affiliated with the Alzheimer's Association. We do collaborate on certain efforts. You know, we're often with our sites at the Alzheimer's walks in the various communities that we serve. There's other events where we might have a presence, and the Alzheimer's Association would also have a presence. But we have a little bit of a different focus from them, although in the end, we're all working to speed up research and be a support to folks who are participating in research. But we are different.
Wonderful. That is a really good question. As well, ActivMed Practices and Research is very involved with helping spread the word with the Alzheimer's Association. I myself do different presentations around in the community for the Alzheimer's Association, helping people to understand dementia, the differences, and the signs of decline in memory. Terry, is there anything else that you would like to add that might be something that would help people to understand the importance of getting free memory testing, the importance of having repeat tests done, having a baseline? I know you do presentations as well as the time goes around. We are seeing some things going a little differently at the office. Would you like to share a little bit more on the impact?
I think it's really important that people realize that the brain is like the last frontier. We know so much about the rest of the body, but it's only been in the past 15 or 20 years that we've actually been able to look to see what's going on in a brain through PET scans and MRIs and CAT scans. Before that, it was a guesstimate on what could actually be happening. So with that, people need to know that there's a lot to still be learned about the brain, and the only way that we can learn it is for individuals to participate in clinical trials so we can learn as much as we can. Some of the clinical trials are just data and asking questions. Other clinical trials involve actually screenings and things like that. But I think it's very important that people understand why clinical trials are needed, because not only are we going to learn about Alzheimer's and dementia, we're going to learn about the brain, more about the cognitive functioning of the brain and how it works at different ages. So that's one of the things that I think is really important. And for memory screenings, the only way you can figure out what's going on is to get one in your brain. If you think that you're forgetting particular things a lot, people's names, your keys, if you're driving yourself insane with a little bit of what you think is a little bit of memory loss, it's really important at age 50 or up until you go that you have memory screenings on a yearly basis. And the reason that is important is so you won't drive yourself crazy thinking you are crazy, because there are other things that can affect it, such as a urinary infection, a lot of stress, family stress, personal stress. So having a memory screening on a yearly basis will help ease your mind and let you know if you have an issue and need to follow up more frequently. I want to thank everyone for...
I have one more question here that I think is a good question. And I think that Karina might be the one to answer this because you work with the studies. Is it feasible to include or match an independent study partner to those volunteers who do not have a partner? Can you give us a reason or answer that, please?
So do you mean like why we require a study partner? Is that what the
No, they're
question-
asking if it's feasible to match someone with someone independent study partner rather because they don't have a partner, a study partner. Because as we have said, and it's something that's very important, is that you have a study partner.
So if I could back up a little bit about that. So the reason why we need a study partner in the studies is because some of the cognitive assessments, like the one I do, which is the CDR, require the caregiver or the study partner to report information on that patient's status. So they need the caregiver needs to be someone who knows the patient at least, or sees the patient at least 10 to 12 hours a week. So it could be a friend, it could be someone that knows a little bit about you that could report back to us on those questions. So in order for that study partner to be in the study, has to be someone that at least knows a little bit about the patient. It could be your spouse, a friend, or a family member that could report for you and confirm some of those questions.
Thank you.
Helps. Yeah.
And then one more question for Jennifer. Do GAP sites make recommendations for improving the quality of life of the study participants?
So great question, and so important, because we know how tough it is to live with Alzheimer's disease, both for the study participant and for the caregiver and the rest of the family. It's a disease that affects typically up to 10 people in the immediate circle. Some of the ways that GAP has tried to be helpful in that, one, in supporting our sites with ways to support the families, because our sites actually have direct contact with the patients and the families as they come in. And, you know, some of our sites provide things like support groups or other community resources, you know, that might be needed. They really become kind of the experts, and so we support them in those efforts. We also have our Activate Your Brain program, which is just a general brain health program. So whether you're having memory loss or not, these are good lifestyle habits that are going to improve your quality of life, and they include things like diet, getting enough sleep, staying socially engaged, which I know in this current climate could be a little bit challenging, reducing stress, so tactics like that. So we definitely have information and a website that provides information about that. And then just one last thing that I'll mention is we have our Citizen Scientist Award, which is a national award, and our sites are open or invited to nominate some of their participants to be recognized for the efforts that they go to be in research. And this is just, again, a way to recognize the sacrifices that folks make and to elevate awareness of Alzheimer's research. So those are some of the things that we do, but really at the site level, they're the heroes in that, because they're the ones that these families are, you know, coming in and seeing every 2 weeks and you know, have that relationship. So we are there to support those efforts as best we can. So kind of a long answer, sorry about that. But great question.
Thank you very much. Terry, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I just want to apologize for the fire alarms. It appears that they're doing testing on our fire system and our elevators, and we didn't know it was going to be happening. So please excuse the beeps. We don't mean to be rude. And I just want to thank everyone for attending and coming.
Please feel free to give us a call and set up a free memory screening if you have any desire to know what your baseline is and to make sure that you have good memory. Thank you.